I'm Will Ortner. This is Chargers Now, and we're going to discuss a trade rumor that was levied out by ESPN's Bill Barnwell. And I think it's a very interesting look at the Chargers because I think most people assume that the Chargers would end up moving back in the NFL draft. Barnwell potentially has them moving forward. Now, does trading up make sense for the Chargers? I don't necessarily know if I completely agree with his reasoning because the position that he has the Chargers going after, I think there's a world where a couple of these players could fall to the Chargers at pick number 22. I also think there's a position that's of greater need for the Chargers with players that, in fact, I think might even be better at their position than the edge rushers that the Chargers could be moving up for. Well, I think that they're better at their spot themselves. Before we get into that, though, let's see if we can beat our like record from last week. Top liked video had 237 likes on it. Can we get more than that on today's video? All you got to do, come on in, hit that thumbs up button. 1, tells us that you love our content. 2, helps us see if we can beat the record. So Bill Barnwell of ESPN, he thinks that the Chargers can jump up. He has a article every single year where he gives the best trades for each team at their given draft position. And the one that he has with the Chargers, he has them jumping up to go and target an edge rusher to try and find a player that can replace the great Odafe Oweh. Here's what Barnwell had to say on the Chargers moving up. Finding a player at a low-cost deal across from Thule has to be one of Hortiz's biggest priorities in this year's draft. He's just stuck behind a few teams that could be looking at edge help, including the Lions at number 17 and the Cowboys at number 20. Getting up past the Ravens and Bucks would be ideal, but if someone such as Keldric Faulk of Auburn or Akheem Mesidor, if they're still on the board at number 16, moving up in a swap with the Jets would be one way to lock in a player who projects as a long-term starter at a position of need for the Chargers. Now, I could potentially see the Chargers being willing to move up if they absolutely fall in love with a given player. Now, I think it's important to note that I don't know that I've heard enough rumors or enough leaks about the Chargers being fully bought in on a player. Now, obviously, we're still at the beginning of April, so there's plenty of time for that kind of news to kind of roll in and roll out. Plenty of times we have seen players, teams make it very clear who they want at a given pick or at a given position. When we look at Mesidor and Faulk, I think that it would be very difficult for the Chargers to find a better edge rusher than either one of these two. Now, Faulk has a lot more of the potential that he can live into, where Mesidor has clearly the production on his side. Also important to note that Faulk, he's a little bit younger, and that the age of Akheem Mesidor, being in his mid-20s already, is something that's kept a lot of teams kind of away from him, or it's at least soured Mesidor in the eyes of some of the other teams. Now, the question is what does it take to potentially move up for this Chargers team? Because I don't know that the Los Angeles Chargers want to give up a lot of draft capital to move up when you have a decent amount of positions that you are going to need to find holes, or you are going to need to fill those holes right now in your squad. You need to fill in on that offensive line. You need to fill in on your defensive line, your edge rusher position as well. You probably wouldn't mind a defensive back or two, or maybe even a wide receiver, depending on what the Chargers decide to do with Quentin Johnston. So the more that I look at this, the more that I realize the price would have to be pretty darn good if the Chargers wanted to move up. Make sure you hit that sub button if you love the Los Angeles Chargers, because we're going to make sure that we have you covered with the latest news and rumors like today's video on the channel. So the trade that Barnwell has the Chargers potentially engaging in, I find very fascinating because, to me, it makes sense for one of these teams. The Chargers would be trading up to get pick number 16. They would obviously have a pick swap where they give up pick number 22. They'd give up their third-round pick at 86 in this year's draft, and then they'd end up having to give up a 2027 third-round pick. The team that I believe this makes sense for is the Jets. They have a lot of draft capital right now. They've made it very clear that they want a lot of draft capital, and they're trying to completely rebuild their roster. The team it doesn't make sense for is the Chargers. That's why I think this trade is absolutely insane. The Chargers are not one edge rusher away from winning a Super Bowl. They are not, in my opinion, in love right now with one of these edge rushers, so much so that they cannot move on without him. In my eyes, there is no reason for the Chargers to make this trade. You're giving up capital in a more impressive draft in 27, and it's a high damn asking price to move all the way up to 16 for someone that we really haven't heard the Chargers being in love with yet. I'll ask you, though, is this trade insane? Would you make this trade, yes or no? Let me know your personal opinion down in the comment section, because I know that General Manager Joe Hortiz is not necessarily the most well-liked general manager in the National Football League, and I know that some of you think he's not very smart. I think he's smart enough to know not to make this trade. I'll tell you why. I got 3 reasons, and the first one is the cost is too damn high. It's too expensive, and I understand that inflation continues to rise, and it's why certain sandwiches that I used to get at an establishment no longer cost $5. But that doesn't mean that my draft capital is going to be more expensive or should be more expensive. When we look at the Chargers draft picks right now, there isn't a plethora of picks. Picks aren't falling from the sky. This isn't a situation where the Chargers have a 3rd-round pick to give up, let alone another pick in the 2027 draft to get up. This is a Chargers team that, while they are good, while I believe they are going to be in a position to win the NFC West, the AFC West, despite how good the AFC West is, they're not one edge rusher away. They're a couple of players away. So there's no reason, in my opinion, to move up the 6 spots it takes to get to 16 for giving up a 3rd-round pick in this year's draft and a pick in the 2027 draft. We already know how valuable that draft is. Why? Because General Manager Joe Hortiz didn't sign an NFL free agent edge rusher because he doesn't want to lose the Odafe Oweh 3rd-round comp pick that he's projected right now. So the 2027 class is viewed as more favorably because of, one, the players in that draft, but also the quarterback class in college football. Now, the Chargers wouldn't need one of those quarterbacks, but a lot of teams in the National Football League are probably going to need one of those quarterbacks, which makes those draft picks more valuable because the Chargers could use them as trade capital later on. It just doesn't make sense. It's too high of an asking price for a guy that either is too old by some guys' standards or a guy who hasn't shown the production out on the field. And I think we've seen enough in the National Football League that production at some point has to matter. How many times have we seen guys that don't have production, but the upside is unlimited, never turn into that upside? I'd also say that the Chargers shouldn't do this trade because you have other positions that are as valuable or in a greater need of replacement. Yeah, you need an edge rusher. Yeah, you need someone who can go in and take up the space of Odafe Oweh. You need someone who can come in and fill that need. I'd say your interior offensive line is much worse. And I'd say that your interior offensive line is a position group that you need to figure out. I'd make the argument that interior defensive line isn't that far behind the edge rusher position. And why not get a younger safety? There's a lot of good safeties in this draft. And there's a world where if those edge rushers are gone, well then hell, a couple of those safeties might end up falling to you. I understand that when you look at the linebacker depth chart right now, it's not great. It's not ideal. I get it. It's Thule and Khalil Mack. That's it. Bud Dupree hasn't been anything that he once was. Kennard, he's still got a lot of room to grow. But I'd sit here and I'd tell you that I don't think that edge rusher group is so atrocious that you need to give up 2 day 2 picks, one in this year's draft and one in next year's draft. I think that you're going to be okay. And in my personal opinion, I'd rather go and attack the offensive line. Because that room, as good as it is at the tackle spots, as good as it is at the center position, I don't think it's that great at the guard. It's pretty clear to me that the Chargers are going to end up starting Cole Strange. I hate that. But to sit here and say that if you ask me who should start Cole Strange or Trevor Penning, I'd prefer Cole Strange. But the fact that right now you have both of those guys as starting guards on your team is terrifying. It should be terrifying, especially for a team that just gave up a ton of sacks on your number 1 quarterback and a quarterback that I believe is a top 10 QB in the National Football League. So it just doesn't make sense to me. There are so many other moves that you can make that are better than this trade. It just doesn't make sense. Why in the world would you pay too much to move up to get a person in a position that you don't love, that it doesn't fill a great need, or you have needs that are equally as great? It is asinine in my opinion. It's a decision and a trade here by Bill Barnwell that I think he just tried to kind of be a little bit different than everybody else. He kind of tried to find something that could be funny or find something that no one else is talking about. But sometimes there's a reason why no one else is talking about them and talking about a move like this. The Chargers don't need to move up, in my personal opinion. And I think that the Chargers are going to be able to fill either a safety need, a edge rusher need, or an offensive line need just by staying at pick number 22. I think that the Chargers, if they do anything, it should be a move back in the draft to get more draft capital. Throw a lot of draft picks at the holes you have on the team, and it's only going to lead to better things for Los Angeles. Let me know who you think the Chargers are going to take in the 2026 NFL Draft. Right now, we're closing in. We're less than a month away. It's the beginning of April. That draft's coming up at the end of April. Sound off on who you think a couple of weeks out right now that the Chargers could go and sign. Hit the thumbs up button if you agree with me on today's video that the Chargers should not engage in the Bill Barnwell trade rumors. I think that personally this Chargers team should stick right where they're at or move back. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video. We are closing in on 3,000 subscribers. I said I wanted to get there before the draft. Can we get there by the end of the week? Let me know. All you got to do, hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video, and bolt up.